Spirit of Life is proudly sponsored by Mattress Oz, mattressesareus.com.au.
Hello, welcome to the Spirit of Life program. My name is Lucy Pace, and today my guest is Fr Augustine Okoth, who's visiting Melbourne from Kenya in Africa. Hello, Fr Augustine. Welcome
Hello,
to
Lucy.
Melbourne.
Thank you.
You've been here before?
Yes, I was here for the first time last year.
Lovely.
Around the same
You
time.
must have enjoyed it because you're back.
Oh yes, of course. It was a wonderful experience, and
Yes.
it is also now.
Yes, you've made many friends too, I believe.
Oh yes,
Since
very
you've
many
been here.
friends, and the friends keep growing.
That's lovely.
Okay.
Fr Augustine, before we go into your priestly vocation and what you do as a priest, would you just give our audience a glimpse of your early life background with your family, etc.?
Mm-hmm. I was born in 1976 to a Catholic family.
Mm-hmm.
Although initially I would say my dad was Catholic and my mom was Anglican, but after they got married, my mom turned to be Catholic. Although I still see her still keeping some of these Anglican traditions. Although I can say that she's a very Catholic one in our family too. And I'm the seventh born in a family of 9 children. And this year I'll be celebrating my 10th year in the priesthood. And I went to school in Mombasa, in a city in Kenya, and also to a junior seminary before joining the major seminary in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And
Junior seminary?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's a concept that we're probably not familiar with here, junior seminary.
A junior seminary would be the equivalent of an ordinary secondary school or high school, whereby people go to this school between the ages of 15 and 18. So basically after finishing primary education, after 8 years of primary education. But now the concept of a junior seminary is actually that there are schools which are run by the Catholic Church, and they are purely for Catholics, for boys only. And it has also this connotation of this perception of also preparing students in a way to join the major seminary. Though from the experience, not all of them join the major seminary, but they are orientated towards making this choice, if at all it will be their calling.
So it's a form of discernment.
Yes.
And in the process of that, they're also being formed spiritually.
Yes.
Even though they may go in the world and not take on the priestly vocation.
Yes.
Because we're all priests by nature, aren't we?
Yes.
Really meant to be.
Yes.
But not necessarily consecrated priests
Yes.
in the church. So they will obviously make a difference in our society, you know,
Yes.
a beneficial difference, change. So, okay, can you tell me then, in your early childhood years,
Yes.
were there hints, like looking back in hindsight, were there hints or that, you know, signs of whether you were going to be a priest as when you get older? Did you know that, or did you actually have an inkling that you were going to be a priest?
Now that I'm a priest and I'm going to be a priest for 10 years, I reflect on some of those maybe some signs that I could have maybe missed out on, and they make sense right now. I would say that there are so many signs, but then I would just pinpoint a few which I would say are quite relevant to me. Like I would remember that just as soon as I joined the junior seminary, I was now exposed to going to Mass every day. And so I was still around 14 years old. And when I would come home for the holidays, I used to play Mass with my younger sister, who is now departed. And this kind of makes sense to me, because it was like as if I celebrated Mass with her, because she's not present to be in my Mass as a priest.
How amazing.
So actually, and I always believe that she's in heaven also, she played a very great part in praying for me to become a priest. Yes.
It's a wonderful way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yes.
So she got to attend your Mass.
She got to attend
privately.
My Mass. Yes, and we were about 3 in this Mass. There was me, and she had cut out an old sheet from the ones that my mother did not use anymore, and I put on this as chasuble. And she had offered her 2 biscuits, which I was looking forward to eat anyway. And also during this Mass, she played the lector, the salva, and all these other parts that were supposed to be played by everyone.
So perhaps she was too practicing for her ministry in heaven.
Yes, actually. And it's quite for me that she died when I was in the 2nd year of formation. And I just left her at home and said goodbye to her. And I would say, in a family of so many children, she was like one of my best friends within the family. So her death actually really struck me. And by the very fact that I said goodbye to her, and then after 2 weeks in the seminary, I received a message, not in a direct way. We didn't have mobile phones during that time, so around 1996. So my spiritual director comes and says, Augustine, who is Nancy Deborah? I said, that's my sister. And then, funny enough, she used the sentence, was she sick? Then I clicked, there's something. We're using sentences in the past tense. So I face value said,
how
then
interesting.
he gave me the sad news that my sister was no more. This was a very devastating time for me.
Yes.
And in fact, I remember that after the funeral, I wanted to leave the formation and go back home. If not leave for good, then leave for some time. And maybe just because I thought my mother was in so much grief, and the family was going through a very hard time. My father was out of work, and so I wrote a letter to them, and I said, I want to come back home. But they wrote back and encouraged me, and they said, keep on with your vocation.
Yes, continue on. So they said to keep on with your vocation. We've got a minute to run before we go to a break. But so what was it? What was the clencher for you? How did you know that you were being called to a priest, apart from these little playthings that you were having, encounters in your life, as in playing the priest, etc.? How did you know that you had a calling on your life?
Yes. With all these other small signs and indications, they all add up to a totality, and every day proving to me that I will be that I will become a priest, and I am a priest. So all these other signs would just indicate to me that.
Father Augustine, we're just going to have a break now, and we'll come back and take that topic up after the break.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon after the break. Welcome back. You're watching the Spirit of Life program, and my guest today is Fr Augustine Okoth, all the way from Kenya in Africa. Father Augustine, prior to the break, you were saying that you had glimpses, an idea of being called into priesthood by all these culminating or progressive signs.
Yes.
So did you actually react positively to that, or did you resist? What was your response?
There were some signs in which I reacted very negatively, because I knew that by the time I was sent to this junior seminary, I didn't like it because it was 900 kilometers away from my family, and so I thought that my parents were kind of sending me away from the family. And so with this, I had a negative attitude, and I didn't think of becoming a priest, and I just wanted the 4 years to be over and I would get on with life. But then there have been all these signs, as I said. And one of the signs came in 1995 when the Holy Father John Paul II was visiting Kenya. And he was coming to say Mass in Nairobi, the capital city. And since we lived 400 kilometers away in Mombasa, the whole family could not attend this Mass. And so my mother decided to pick on me to represent the whole family at this Mass. And before I went, she gave me rosaries from each and every member of the family, which I would lift up during when the Pope gives the final blessings, and with that would believe that all the rosaries have been blessed. I started this journey a night before, but then I could not make it to the Mass because the bus broke down.
The bus broke down?
Yes, the bus broke down.
Goodness.
And I managed to arrive only after everyone had left the venue for the Mass.
Oh.
And I sat down there, and I remember I shed a tear.
How crushingly disappointed.
Because first I didn't know how I was going to go back home and tell my mother, whom I'd always been saying to that I don't want to become a priest. And I think that maybe Mass is boring and things like that. And then secondly, also go back with all these rosaries which had not yet been blessed. So I remember there and then, I made a promise to the Blessed Virgin Mary. They said, if you'd bring back the Pope back to Kenya, I would start my journey a week before and come so that to have all this. But again, deep in my heart, there were some doubts because I knew the Holy Father was sickly and was getting old. So, and then I made a second promise and said that, okay, then I've decided now I want to go and become a priest, although I did not make this promise definitively, so that I'd be able to be blessing rosaries for my mother and whoever wants. Well, later on, I was to join the seminary in 1997, and then all these other things would happen. But then again, strange enough, in the year 2000, my bishop called me and said, we are sending you to Rome to study theology. And that is where now the signs started getting stronger.
Yes.
They said now the signs are becoming more confirmatory. I asked the Blessed Virgin Mary to bring the Holy Father, but now no, she's taking me to the Holy Father. I asked for one day, that the Holy Father might come for one day in Kenya, but now here she's giving me 4 years of theology, 5 years of theology in Rome. Basically, you can see the Pope every Wednesday at the audience or something of the sort. And then later on, in 2001, I remember that I was picked to go and serve as an altar boy before the Holy Father, and I was holding this book before him. So the Blessed Virgin Mary had brought the Holy Father just now 1 meter close to me.
Goodness gracious.
And then after this experience, I wanted to rush home and call my mom and said, you know, all this, the Pope has even blessed the rosary. Because I remember when I went to serve, I also carried a few rosaries in my pocket. I say, now, the closer I get, the more powerful the blessing and all these kind of things. So when I wanted to rush out, they said, no, you have to greet the Pope first. And I said, wow. Now this was bringing the Pope to the Mass. Then Our Lady brings me 1 meter before, and then now I'm actually going to touch the hand of the Pope. And so when I did this and I kissed his ring, I don't remember quite clearly, but I think that maybe those who were close by were now kind of tagging me out away because I wanted to remain there. But then I remember the Pope saying something in my language, because you know Pope John Paul, who is actually going to be canonized soon, he knew quite many languages, and he says, I have something for you. And he drew out this rosary and gave it to me. And so this rosary is with my mother.
That's remarkable.
Actually,
so you missed the Pope
in Kenya.
And you had all these rosaries to have blessed.
Yes.
And out of all the things the Pope could have given you, he gave you blessed rosary beads.
Rosary.
Specifically for
said,
you or your mum?
He said, I have something for you. And then I said, now, this gift is so precious, I cannot keep it. Who was the person who really wanted a rosary blessed by the Pope? I said, I give it to my mum, and she has it up to today. It's really something she keeps really under watchful care. That's remarkable. Yes.
So you're saying that sort of spurred you on?
Yes.
And that was like a personal sign for you that you were on the right track,
yes,
on the right path.
Because now this happened when I was still like 3 more years before ordination, and then the Pope kind of makes a sign of cross on my forehead, and I felt like virtually I was now ordained. I was just waiting for the confirmatory ceremony in a few years' time. So from then it became more clearer and more confirmatory.
Wow.
That this is what.
So now you're a priest.
Yes.
Ordained 10 years. Any disappointments? Any regrets?
Yes. I would say that as there are regrets that may look negative but turn out to be positive in a way.
Can you give us an example?
I would say that maybe with the zeal I started out in my priesthood, I was making some few mistakes, and these mistakes I really regret, because I was maybe not letting out so much God to work through me as an instrument, but maybe I felt that this is what I should be doing and all that kind of things. This is the only regret I can foresee. And maybe really during the first years of my life, you know, you're still in the first early years of the priesthood, like you like to convert the whole world and do all those things. So sometimes you might do some things maybe that do not go in line with obedience, maybe to your superiors, in something of the sort. But then these are things that really, as the years unfold, God teaches you more clear. But
Indeed.
there have been many, many more other joys that these regrets cannot be compared to.
Which I'm hoping to hear some of after the break, the next break. But you know, you say you regret it, but it's really all part of the learning curve, isn't it?
Yes.
We're just going to take another break now. We'll be back. See you back in a few moments. Welcome back. My guest today is Father Augustine, all the way from Kenya. Hi, Father. Before the break, you mentioned that when you first became a priest, you were so zealous, and you more or less were indicating that you were running ahead of the Lord.
Yes.
Thinking that you had to do it all. What's changed now?
What has changed right now is that I've given way to kind of letting the Spirit of the Lord work in me, and paying more attention to the needs of the flock, which actually belong to Jesus and not to me, and actually tending to them as the great shepherd Jesus Christ would wish that his flock be tended to. Yes, and I kind of say that I say that every day I keep learning something new, and Jesus reveals himself something through his word, through his sacraments, how he would like his people to be served.
So you recently built a church, Father.
Yes.
And okay, so give us an example of what you've just said now, in how you would walk with God, and how you knew that God was asking you to build a church, because you did have you already had an old church there, didn't you?
Yes.
Please tell us.
Now, I would say that in the first years of my priesthood, I would go around and make fundraisings, ask people to donate, and to for projects, churches, hospitals, and all this. And that has changed in the last few years, because I found out that I was not 100% successful during those times. In fact, I can look that there were some fundraisings I used to do even without praying for these fundraisings.
Okay.
And maybe that at times, and then when I would have to go and fundraise in the context of celebrating Mass, maybe, and I would really kind of be sorry to the Lord for this, my attention and focus would be like, well, I have to say this after this Mass ends. So the Mass was just like something that I have to pass through in order to get to this.
Your agenda.
Yes.
Your fundraising agenda.
And sometimes I'm very, very sorry to the Lord for this.
Yes.
At that time, the Lord used to give me success, but again, give me sometimes some failures also. But what I found out that after all these projects, whether they were completed, still inside I would not feel having the satisfaction of having served the Lord. So in the last 4 years, what I've come to find out is to kind of really just leave everything in the hands of the Lord. In fact, nowadays, I don't talk of any project, whatever. So what I've always come to find in my life is that what the Lord provides, that is what you see and do what can be done.
So you're talking about sheer providence here.
Yes.
So the Lord shows you and provides,
Yes.
and then you move into it and through it with Him.
Yes.
Okay, give us an example of the church.
Yes.
Because there's something amazing happened. You shared with me later, which I'd love your
last year when I was on this journey, first here to Australia, and then I went to Malta, and then went to Germany. Strictly in my mind, also, as I said, in the last 4 years, I've not been fundraising for something, because even I just left everything in the hands of the Lord. And little did I know in my mind that I would come to build a church. So when I came over here and I was talking to the people, I was more focused on experiencing the church in its diversity in all these different countries. But then now I was more focused on preaching the word of the Lord and everything. But then later on, it came off that several people just came out and say, Father, we have this donation, we would like to do something. And so going back to my diocese, I organized this through the necessary offices. And now we have a church built,
Lovely.
which I had not kind of programmed. Although I must say that just beside the church, there was an older one, which the walls were cracking. In fact, when I was saying Mass and I used to lift my hands like that, part of my prayer was that, oh, Lord, hold these walls together. And the funny thing is that, and the most kind of providential thing was that as soon as we finished this new church, it didn't pass a week and this old church crumbled down.
How amazing is that? Wow, what an amazing
So
sign.
God knew what we needed.
You didn't have to bring the demolishers in.
Because I already had it in my mind and say, okay, if this wall goes down, then we'll resort to having Mass maybe under a tree. We sometimes do this quite in often very many places, whereby we have people and the church is not yet built.
Yes.
But the Lord was planning by Himself what He would do.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So He even took it to that length, that
Yeah.
end degree, where He demolished the church at the end of it.
Yes, so you don't
The
need
old
this
church.
anymore.
How amazing.
Yes.
Now we've got probably about 3 minutes to run, but I'd love to hear some fruitful stories of a result of prayers
Yes.
in your ministry.
Yes. And also, as I now go through these years, as I say, the 10th year of my priesthood, I have witnessed also, and I can bear testimony to many cases of healing that come through ministering the word of God upon people. Indeed, also Jesus in His word, He commands us, go forth and heal the people. He Himself tells us through His word that we are given this power to perform these miracles. And even He says at some point that when the apostles were witnessing to some miracles He had done, He told them that you'll be able to do works such as this or even greater than these. So when these words have become really alive in me, and I have witnessed this both here in Australia, let's say wherever I have visited, and also back in my place, whereby we do not have hospitals nearby, people heal through the word
Praise
of God.
Just a quick example of healing, because we're at the end of our program now, but just a quick example.
Yes.
A baby, a headache.
Yes, we've had very many miracle babies in
Yes.
Australia.
The women that couldn't have babies now is a
Yes.
witness to that, by the
And
way.
those also
Yes.
listening to us through now here, we
Yes.
can pray the rosary
Yes.
together, and
Yes.
you will have your baby, and
Yes.
I pray
Yes.
that you have
Praise God. Yes.
this baby. And there are quite a number I'm praying for
Yes.
these miracles to happen.
Yes. And a woman, I believe, had a very severe chronic migraine issue problems for years.
Yes.
And you had got a word of knowledge,
Yes.
so to speak, that someone in the congregation had
Yes.
suffered, and it was this woman, and she
Yes.
reported that her headaches have vanished from that day on.
For the last 1 year, that she had not ever got
Praise
them again.
God. Father, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our program. I would have loved to have spoken to you much longer, but thank you very much for coming on our program. You've got a healing service that you're celebrating on the 12th of May at St. Paul's in Sunshine West.
Yes.
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Right.
Welcome.
I'll be there.
Welcome.
Yes. Now, Father, thank you again, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
You've been watching the Spirit of Life program. We'll see you again next time, same place, same time.
Bring it to birth and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit. Blow.
Spirit of Life was proudly sponsored by Mattress Oz, mattressesareus.com.au.